In Kansas, too many children still struggle to read at grade level. But the story isn't just about struggling students. It's about the systems, the programs, and the leaders shaping how reading is taught. I'm Jessica Glover, and this is My Child Can't Read, a Heartland Crisis, a documentary-style podcast about how students are left behind and what can be done to help them. In this season, called The Anatomy of Change, we take a look inside teacher preparation programs, classrooms, and among state-level leaders directing the future of literacy in Kansas. We talk with educators, parents, and experts about what works, from evidence-based curriculum and teacher training to coaching and assessment. You'll hear stories of students who found their footing when instruction finally matched the science of reading, and the systemic barriers that still hold too many kids back. Change isn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it is happening in Kansas and across the nation. And in this season, we'll show you how, why, and who is leading the charge. This is a story about systems, science, and people refusing to accept failure as the status quo. Because all our kids deserve to read, understand, and thrive right here in the Heartland. The national picture. They say numbers don't lie, and the numbers tell a sobering story about how our nation's children are reading. Every 2 years, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the NAEP, often called the nation's report card, tests 4th and 8th grade students chosen at random in reading and math every 2 years. In 2024, 69% of 4th graders nationwide scored below proficient in reading. In other words, 31% of 4th grade students performed at or above the NAEP proficient level on the 2024 NAEP reading assessment, which was 2 percentage points lower compared to 2022 and 4 percentage points lower than 2019. This isn't just a recent problem. Across the United States, 4th grade reading scores have shown little long-term growth since 1992. The Annie E. Casey Foundation underscores the stakes. Reading proficiency by the end of 3rd grade is the single most important predictor of high school graduation and career success. And remember from earlier episodes, the science of reading isn't new. We know how the brain learns to read. First by hearing sounds and words, phonological awareness, then connecting those sounds to letters, phonics, practicing until the reading is accurate and automatic, fluency, and building vocabulary and knowledge so students can comprehend what they read. In short, it's teaching kids the skills to read the words and the tools to make meaning from those words. In 1997, Congress convened the National Reading Panel to review all scientific evidence on reading instruction. Their final report in 2000 identified 5 essential components: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, now widely recognized as the pillars of the science of reading. Let's decode the numbers and find the truth behind the statistics.
It's really, really sad to see the state of our reading literacy in Kansas. And I don't think that we can really stand by and ignore it too much longer because our students are falling behind and our communities are really going to start feeling the repercussions of that long-term impact. Just looking at our 2024 data, I know our 2025 data is still a little skewed and up in the air, but if we really look at just 2024, only 28 to 30% of our 10th graders were proficient in reading, which means they are seniors in high school and they're going to be going out looking at what their future holds. And if only 28 to 30% of them can read, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Today in the United States, there's so many people who are not reading, some of whom have never been taught to read. We have 40% of our kids who are reading below the basic level on the National Assessment of Educational Progress in Reading. And what that essentially means is you can't read. 40% of our kids reading below the basic level is terrible with a capital T.
Yeah.
And we all need to do something about that right now.
Yeah.
We can't wait, because kids who are struggling readers, who are in kindergarten, they look around, they're like, man, I'm so motivated to learn how to read and write, and I don't know how to do that. There's something wrong with me. And so these kids really are harmed psychologically, emotionally. They drop out of school, more likely to involve themselves in, drugs. A friend of mine, Linda Siegel in Canada, and one of her students in 1998, they looked at all the kids who committed suicide and left suicide notes, and 89% of them could have or were identified as having a reading disability.
Wow.
So
89%.
This is a system-wide problem. And when you can't read in school, you don't magically become a reader when you graduate from high school or you drop out of high school. What happens with adult illiteracy is it costs the U.S. economy $2.2 trillion a year.
Wow.
And that's not counting, people who feel terrible about themselves, feel like education didn't really help them. A lot of people very, very unhappy because we didn't allow them to realize the American dream because we didn't teach them how to read. So it's just really unfortunate, but the really good news is we know what to do about it. At the Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, we've been doing stuff to help kids. At the Center for Reading here, we've been doing things. There are other pockets of individuals who have been trained in science and structured literacy, how to help kids become competent readers all over the state. And Senate Bill 438, the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy, wanted to get everybody on the same page. So that's a really exciting bill, but if you have almost half of your population who can't read, and then many of whom it's a struggle so they don't read, then they're not informed on things that can help them in their health, their kids, how to get decent jobs. We got some work to do, and we all need to be involved with the solution.
Kansas in context. How does Kansas compare? 2024 NAEP scores show the average score of fourth grade students in Kansas was 213, which was not significantly different from the average score of 214 for students in the nation. The percentage of students in Kansas who performed at or above the NAEP proficient level was 28% in 2024. This percentage was not significantly different from that in 2022, 31%, and in 1998, 34%. In some districts, the numbers are even more stark. In urban and rural areas alike, some schools report less than 20% proficiency in early grades.
I'm Danielle Morris, and I'm in my 20th year of teaching, currently in Andover. My son, Rogan, is 8 years old, and we started seeing issues with his reading at age 4. And it was a very long journey getting us to RLA. Starting in pre-K in October, and his teacher let us know that he knew 0 letters by name and 1 sound. And the sound he knew was B, and B is not in his name. And being a teacher and having other children of my own, I was concerned immediately. I said, he can't recognize R. His name starts with an R. And our older children, that was the first letter they knew, the first sound they knew, could identify it out in the world, and Rogan could not. So I immediately said, could we get some extra help and support? we were told, sure, but let's wait a bit. And so second semester comes, there's no difference. So again, I'm begging for support in pre-K. Pre-K is not in my building, so I didn't really know the teachers. I didn't know the staff. I didn't super feel comfortable going to anybody. Kindergarten comes, he had an amazing teacher, and immediately she asked our reading support to work with him. So starting in kindergarten, he got AP, only 30 minutes of the day where we felt like he was getting anything out of the day besides social skills. So our building, again, has a wait and see policy when it comes to kindergarten, and we can't take them for team until one semester in. And even though I worked in the building, I begged our principal to let us talk about what's going on. And I was told no. And so we get to the meeting, and my ex-husband and I are like, we have all these concerns, and we just keep saying, oh, we'll just keep him going 30 minutes of AP a day. We'll see improvement. There's barely a movement of improvement. So first grade comes, and his first grade teacher was a former special education teacher.
Okay.
And I finally talked with my ex-husband, and we both agreed he needs testing. So we talked to her. She agrees. My principal doesn't agree. So as a teacher, I know the workaround. So I said, I can't ask for the testing because this is my job and I want to keep it. You're going to have to email everybody and have it in writing. And having it in writing got him in and tested, and he was the first person on our caseload in our building to be labeled dyslexic by special education testing. So that was huge. But even then they were saying, oh, he'll probably not need this IEP for very long. I was like, but we're not seeing a difference. We go into second grade, come out of his IEP. I asked, is there any way he could get an hour of support of AP? Because I know that's what they're needing and what they're supposed to do. And the special education teacher said that she's got training, but she doesn't like doing it. So we were told no. At that moment, my ex-husband, he asked our new principal questions and didn't like the answers we got, which for me, was a blessing because I knew if we didn't get the answers we wanted, then he would agree to at least come in for testing at fundamental learning and see what our options were. And we did. And he's pretty close to profoundly dyslexic. So immediately when we took the tour, my ex looks at me and I said, I already have my decision. And he goes, he has to come here. So we came, and we went from every single day him throwing up in my classroom before school, like to the point the custodians had stuff like materials ready for me to clean up so my classroom would be clean every day, till he's had one nervous tummy one time and it had nothing to do with school.
Wow. That's amazing. What a transformation.
It was huge.
Wow.
So we've caught him in the backseat of the car reading. That's never happened.
Mm-hmm.
We have heard him go, oh my gosh, such and such rhymes with such and such. And he was unable to do that last year.
Yeah.
He went back to my school for the book fair, and everybody was going on and on because he's very well loved at that school. After they left, because he doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, he turned to my mom and said, well, I don't want to come back here because I go to the best school in the whole world.
I love that.
So it's making a huge difference in just every part of our routine. And there's no fights. There's no getting sick. There's no crying. We we're ready to go to school.
Isn't that the key? Like when you're getting what you need?
Yes. And I've been fighting for 20 years for students on this. And it's just nothing's been available. And when it's available, it's very limited.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're really in the beginnings, I think, as a state.
Yes.
Dyslexia finally got acknowledged 2 years ago.
It used to be we couldn't even say it to parents.
Yeah.
Like you could get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And now we're saying more, but now we're like, can we get training so that we can help these students? Because I know about it. I know what the warning signs are, but what can I do?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for advocating for your son, and thank you for sharing with us your experience, because I think a lot of people can probably relate.
Very much so.
And that's what we want to do, is make people feel like there is hope.
There is.
And part of it is getting the help you need. And then the other part sometimes is advocating for future generations.
Exactly.
When I look at the case data, I don't see numbers. I see children, thousands of them, whose potential is being limited because they weren't given the right instruction. Data must be a mirror for all of us. We can't look away. We must ask, what are these numbers telling us about our school system's ability to implement the most scientifically valid instructional programs and provide the most effective professional development for teachers and leaders?
My name is Alana McWilliams. I kind of came to the education space because I have 2 children with dyslexia. And it was something that I had never heard of before, but it made a lot of sense. I had a really interesting sort of educational journey. I myself was probably a struggling reader when I look at how I performed in high school, and my saving grace was sports. I got a scholarship and thought that this was an amazing opportunity. And because I was studying things that I was interested in, I succeeded, I flourished. I did an internship my junior year at the White House and knew that I wanted to go back to Washington, D.C. to affect change. I believe, young people can change the world. And so after I graduated, I had stayed in touch with the White House Writers Group and actually got a job with the gentleman who ran the Global Communications Office at the White House. He had a boutique lobbying firm and got to work on campaigns and learning how to shape policy and working with people to refine how they wanted to communicate. I did that for a couple of years and then helped launch a different organization and spent the next 10 years lobbying on security issues. And I loved it. We worked on everything from trade to drug trafficking to border security issues. So during that time, I got really into how we research and how do you package something together that will make people want to care about the issue. And of course, my husband and I started a family, and we knew that we wanted to have our kids not grow up in a concrete jungle. So we moved to Kansas, where our family was. So that's how we ended up here. I firmly believe that if we adopt structured literacy, we will see the Kansas comeback, but we're not there. Mm-hmm. Our data shows that we're not. And until we can firmly name the issue, that we have 40% of students performing below basic, we have 30% at basic.
What does that actually mean?
So this is the 12th grade basic reading standard. Students are able to draw general conclusions based on concepts presented explicitly in the text. They're able to make an inference that demonstrates a basic understanding of literary elements like the author's purpose. But those are explicitly defined. So it might be, here's the title of the paragraph. Can you read it? That's basic. But proficient is they're able to critique an author's use of figurative language. They're able to synthesize several documents and support one or more opinions using relevant evidence from the text. That's where we want everybody to be performing by 12th grade in reading. I want somebody to read a news article and then read another news article and compare them and make an informed decision. We talk about misinformation and malinformation are terminologies that are coming out, but we don't 70% of the kids are not equipped with the ability to do that when they graduate. We have 54 million adult Americans, 1 in 6 that are below basic literacy.
Which means that people can't make informed decisions because they're unable to compare information. It baffles me.
Yeah.
You've said that 41% of students performing at level 1 isn't just a statistic, it's actually 190,000 lives. What would it take for Kansas leaders to feel that urgency the way parents and teachers do?
So I think part of the problem is that we use statistics. So the state's going to report something like 40%. I said 190,000 because I wanted people to realize the scope of what does that mean.
It's big.
It's huge. So if we concentrated all of the kids that are performing below basic, that's the equivalent of the 10 to 12 largest school districts in the state of Kansas. So that's like missing every student enrolled in Wichita, Shawnee Mission, Olathe, Blue Valley, Topeka, Lawrence, Salina, Manhattan, and Ogden combined. When we talk about the dropout rate, 58,000 kids, we have 89.6%, I think is the graduation rate.
Okay.
So we have about 58,000 kids drop out of school every year. That's 11%. That's like the equivalent of every man, woman, and child in Leavenworth, Kansas. Whoa. Could you imagine what the impact on the economy that is?
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I think it's just helpful to like put a face,
yes,
a number, because it's not a stat. It's like real people.
Well, my background is history, and so they say there's this quote from Stalin that's like 1 death is a tragedy, 1,000 deaths is a statistic, and we talk about data, but I think unless we make it real for our legislators and real for our business people to recognize that this is every issue that we're fighting. I think back to, we had invited our superintendent to sit in on our school board meeting. And he asked me jokingly after we had talked about, trying to get structured literacy and, we solved this problem. So how do we solve bullying? Teach our kids to read. You want to target the mental health crisis? Teach our kids to read. You want to tackle teen anxiety? Get them off the phones and then teach them to read. Like we know what to do and we know what solves problems, because our low readers are more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. So 50% of juvenile delinquents have a reading-based issue of dyslexia. It doesn't get identified and remediated for. We know that once they enter the criminal justice system, there's 85% of juvenile offenders struggle with reading-based issues. So those are the kids that are identified. So whether that's behavioral, crime, drug use, and 2/3 of the students who can't read proficiently by 4th grade are at risk for incarceration or dependence on welfare.
Who's most affected? The data also reveal deep inequities. Nationally, only 9% of Black students and 17% of Hispanic students in grade 4 read proficiently, compared to 42% of white students. In Kansas, similar gaps persist, along with challenges for students with disabilities and English learners. But here's the key. When schools adopt evidence-based reading instruction, all students benefit and achievement gaps narrow. Another challenge we face is when children are tested for reading difficulties. There's a persistent myth that kindergartners and first graders cannot be screened for dyslexia. The truth? They can and should. Don't worry, they will outgrow it often means kids miss the window when structured literacy is most effective. That critical period when early intervention makes the biggest difference. The International Dyslexia Association emphasizes that early identification gives children the support they need before they fall behind, reducing struggles in later grades and on state and national assessments. Simply put, the earlier we act, the better the outcomes for reading, for confidence, and for lifelong success. And that's exactly why evidence-based instruction matters, because identifying it early changes everything.
The data consistently shows that students in low-income households, African American children, and students learning English as a second language are most at risk of falling behind in reading. I feel personally that there's a lot of reasons for this. Some students don't come to school with the same background knowledge or early literacy experience as their peers. Many of the schools they attend are under-resourced and can't always provide the strong, consistent reading instruction. And then if you add to that the teacher shortage and overcrowded classrooms, it becomes incredibly difficult to give struggling students the individualized support that they need. But the encouraging part is we do know what works. Structured literacy and evidence-based reading instruction can make a tremendous difference. And that is our goal, to get the training, the right training, the tools, the resources into the hands of teachers. And we can begin to close those gaps and give every child, no matter their background, a real chance at succeeding in reading.
How do reading struggles show up in the classroom for students from diverse backgrounds or with learning differences?
It often shows up as behavior. They're usually, acting out in some way. They might joke around. They might try to be the class comedian or even act out as a way to avoid an assignment. Some become withdrawn, while others might push back more forcefully, even to the point of aggression. They don't really know how else to say, I don't understand this. They don't want to look stupid in front of their friends, in front of their peers, in front of the teachers. All kids, I don't care what age, they all want to please. They really want to please. If it's something they can't do, they get embarrassed by that. So, what often looks like misbehavior, I feel like is often a cry for help. And the hopeful part is that when teachers recognize that these behaviors can be linked to those reading struggles, it shifts the response. Instead of seeing a problem student, we can start seeing a student with an unmet need. And that opens the door to providing the right kind of support.
What I've seen working quite literally around the world is that kids are kids, and dyslexia doesn't discriminate. It shows up in every classroom, in every country, every income level, and what all of our kids need is access. They need access to teachers who are trained, access to high quality materials, and access to instruction that actually works for them. I believe in teachers. I have seen what happens when we give them the tools and the training and the trust. They show up in big ways. The movement is growing. It's growing because people are not willing to settle for good enough anymore.
What the numbers don't say.
Well, for me, as both a teacher and an administrator, there was always a lot of anxiety around the district report card. You were always worried about what those reading scores would say about your schools, your jobs, and most importantly, about our students. I think some educators respond by putting their heads in the sand and saying, we've provided tools. If students or parents don't engage, that's on them. But I also know there are many teachers and administrators who are working tirelessly, looking for better ways to reach their students. For me, I think one of the real barriers is funding and priorities. I feel like schools need to be intentional about investing in the evidence-based instruction, making sure it's happening at every grade level. That's why I'm encouraged by what we're seeing here in Kansas with the science of reading legislation and the improved list of instructional tools. It shows that when policy funding and classroom practice align, we can really move that needle for the kids. none of this data is new. You know, we've known about structured literacy and alphabetic phonics since the 1970s, and we know that it works. So the real question is, why hasn't this been prioritized in every school across the country? I'll be honest, when I went through my first training at Phillips Fundamental, I carried a lot of guilt, and I mentioned that before. Just picturing the faces of my previous students, had we just realized that they were dyslexic and been able to give them that opportunity. One of the instructors said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, "You can't beat yourself up. You only knew what you knew. Now you know more. And once you know, you have to do better." And that's the message I wish policymakers would take to heart. Once we know what works, we don't have the excuse of doing anything less. Every student deserves the right instruction. It's just the right thing to do.
Data is powerful, but it's not the whole story. Behind every percentage point is a child, a teacher, a family wondering why their bright, capable kid is struggling to read. That's why we need to use these numbers, not just to measure, but to motivate. Because here's what the numbers do show. When we implement the science of reading, scores improve. Mississippi went from 28% proficiency in 2013 to 43% in 2019. In schools that adopted structured literacy, special education referrals dropped by 40%. Change is possible, and it's measurable.
Numbers can either paralyze us or propel us. We must choose the latter. The data tells us that the science of reading works. The question is whether we will have the courage to act on it.
Are we using a curriculum based in reading science? Are our teachers trained to teach decoding and phonemic awareness? Are we using assessments that actually reflect reading ability? If you didn't like your answers to those questions, here's what you can do next. Numbers show where we've failed and where we can fix things. Every school can choose to align their instruction with what the data and the science demand. Parents, take your child's scores and a PFLC diagnostic assessment to a parent-teacher meeting. Talk directly with your child's teacher and principal. Ask what curriculum is being used and what training their teachers have received. Community. Start a local petition or PTA agenda item asking for structured literacy audits. Policymakers. Email your state board representative with a link to the episode and request a briefing on House Bill 2322, implementation and funding. If you want immediate help for your child, schedule an assessment with Phillips Fundamental Learning Center at funlearn.org or call 316-684-7323. Take those results to your next parent-teacher meeting so you can have data that drives action.
My name is Amy Engelbrecht, and I am a teacher at PFLC. I teach alphabetic phonics and assistive technology, and I'm also a parent of a student who struggled to learn to read. And parents and teachers, we're not on opposite sides. We both want kids to thrive, and when we work together, that's when the big breakthroughs happen.
At Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, we meet a lot of families who say, something just feels off, but I don't know what it is. So if you're wondering about your child's literacy development, you're not alone. Here are some signs that might point to early dyslexia or neurodivergence. Does your child mix up sounds like saying aminal for animal? Struggle with fine motor skills like using crayons or a fork? Confuse directions like up and down, left and right? Have trouble following multi-step instructions? Struggles with rhythm, skipping or reciting songs? Gets frequent ear infections? Writes their name but can't identify the letters? Well, if 6 or more of these sound familiar, your child may be at risk for dyslexia, and that's exactly why we're here. I'm one of the assessors at Phillips. And when you come in, you'll be met with care, not judgment. We'll guide you through a gentle, developmentally appropriate assessment, and together, we'll uncover what's really going on. After the assessment, we create a personalized path forward, tailored to your child's unique needs. That may include free trainings just for parents, a look at our specialized school, a list of trusted, trained literacy specialists, or even professional development for your child's current teacher. But you shouldn't have to figure this out alone. Let's take the next step together. Call 316-684-7323 or visit funlearn.org today to schedule your child's assessment. We're here when you're ready.
Coming up next, what Kansas can learn from states that are turning things around. It's the story of the reading revival and a blueprint for real systemic change. Until then, remember, numbers don't just tell a story, they demand action. Share this episode with a policymaker, an educator, or a parent who needs to know change is possible. And if your child needs help today, start with Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, because waiting isn't an option. Thanks for listening to My Child Can't Read, a Heartland Crisis. If today's episode resonated with you, if you saw yourself, your child, or your classroom in these stories, you're not alone. We believe every child can learn to read, and every parent and teacher deserves the knowledge to help them. I invite you to take action today by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode, rate and review to help others find this series, and tell us about your story and discover how the Phillips Fundamental Learning Center is changing lives through literacy at funlearn.org/podcast. That's funlearn.org/podcast. And share this show with a friend, teacher, or fellow parent who needs to hear it. All resources, source credits, and tools mentioned in this episode can be found in the show notes. Remember, together we can rewrite the story one reader at a time right here in the Heartland.